Up next, we have the Rita Wilson Prize. And first off, to introduce our panel of fantastic judges, we have Billy Huang, founder of Source Development Hub. We have Marina Mamalejo, Director of House Innovation at Connecticut Department of Housing and the founder of DreamKit. We have Saim Hayek, Organization and Leadership Coach. We have Travis Whitfield, partner at BIOS Partners and assistant professor at Yale School of Medicine. We have Song Kim, co-founder and CEO of CoveDX, and William Crawford, investor and advisor. So a round of applause for our amazing judges, please. And we also have 4 incredible pitches today. We have Ensight-AI, Equality Bio, Patient Control Dispenser and Deactivator, and Relivium. I just a round of applause right now for our amazing pitches. You'll hear from them shortly. Okay, and then we're going to start right away. First up is going to be Ensight-AI. So please, round of applause for Ensight-AI.
Hi, everyone. My name is Veer Sangha, and I'm a senior at Yale College studying computer science. And today, I'll be presenting Ensight-AI, a new paradigm for cardiovascular disease diagnosis using AI-enabled insights into ECGs. I'm joined in this venture by Drs. Rohan Khera, a clinician and data scientist, and the director of the Cardiovascular Data Science Lab at Yale, and Dr. Harlan Krumholz, a global leader in cardiovascular research, an entrepreneur, and a venture partner at F Prime. Cardiovascular disease is the #1 leading cause of death globally. Most forms of advanced cardiovascular disease require resource-intensive imaging in order to diagnose patients. Therefore, most patients remain undiagnosed, and those that are diagnosed often have expensive, difficult-to-obtain imaging tied to their therapies. Therefore, there is a significant global need for a low-cost, easily accessible screening tool to diagnose cardiovascular disease. Ensight-AI has a solution to this problem. Our product is AI-enabled software that diagnoses cardiovascular disease using ECGs. ECGs, or electrocardiograms, are surface-level recordings of the heart's electrical activity. Our technology can be used to reduce the reliance on expensive and hard-to-obtain advanced cardiac imaging. Our technology was developed using repositories of data from the Yale New Haven Health System and can be applied in 2 easily accessible formats, either on 12-lead ECG images, which physicians or patients can obtain by taking screenshots, scans, or pictures of their 12-lead ECGs, the most easy way to obtain them, or through wearable-derived data, such as through an Apple Watch or a Fitbit. To summarize, our AI models are applied to ECGs, which are low cost, are available globally as standardized images, are becoming more and more available through the use of wearable devices, and importantly, can augment what physicians can do by finding hidden patterns of diseases in ECGs that physicians themselves often cannot see. We currently have 2 classes of solutions. First, we can do a health system level screening where we apply our algorithms to every patient in an EHR system and identify everyone who's at risk or who clinicians may have missed. Furthermore, using a web or mobile app, we can do patient level screening in which a patient or a physician uploads an image or a scan of an ECG or links wearable data to the app, and we're able to provide individualized predictions for patients. Our product fills an area of significant need. There are millions and millions of patients in the US who have cardiovascular disease, and unfortunately, the vast majority of these patients are undiagnosed. Our solution has the potential to help anyone who's received an ECG in a clinical health setting, as well as anyone that has access to a wearable. So if any of you have an Apple Watch here today, we could use that data and help you get a prediction. And we don't just have one product. Our lab has developed technology to work across a broad suite of cardiovascular indications. One of these indications has received interest from Bristol Myers Squibb, a large pharmaceutical company, who is so excited by the potential of our technology to expand the reach of their effective solution that they have partnered with our lab on its development. In the next 12 months, we anticipate FDA approval for our most approved product, one that detects reduced ejection fraction, as well as submission to the FDA for several other products. On this path to FDA approval for our most advanced product that I just mentioned, the one to detect low EF, we have performed extensive validation of our technology across the US and globally. This includes real-world studies at 5 validation sites in the US, including Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles, 2 sites in Texas, 1 site in rural Missouri, and several outpatient centers across Connecticut. Additionally, we have performed a prospective study using a cohort from Brazil. Across the board, we have seen excellent performance with AUCs of above 0.9. Now, this is a bit of a ML term, so to simplify it a little bit, across sites, our model has had a sensitivity of above 90%, meaning it can catch 90% of cases of patients with diseases. And with a positive predictive value of 50 to 60%, there aren't that many false positives. And we've also found that in cases where our model may make mistakes, where a patient is healthy at baseline, but our model predicts that they have a disease, patients are 4 times as likely to develop the disease in the upcoming years, meaning that the model may have future predictive capabilities. So we're on the path to FDA approval. We have a software backend that we've already used in 6 validation studies, but we still have significant hurdles ahead of us. We're requesting $10,000 from the Wilson Prize for software development. In order to scale our solution, get it out to more patients and more clinical and more health systems, we need a new pipeline to improve our data streams from EHR systems, as well as to scale our mobile and web applications. Anyone can access the current backend that we have for our model on our lab website using this QR code. But as I mentioned, to scale the product, we need more software development. Our current plan is to first deploy our product at a health system level across clinical sites with which we have existing relationships and with which we can use the support of our pharmaceutical partners to get health system level screening. But we don't plan to stop there. Our goal is to reach as many patients as possible. To do, we envision having a direct-to-consumer product where we have a web app or a mobile app on which patients can either upload pictures of their ECGs or clinicians can upload pictures or scans of their ECGs, or where we can link wearable data to provide a report card across our suite of cardiovascular indications. We have competition, but our stakeholders, namely health systems, clinicians, and patients, have told us that the solutions offered by these competitors aren't as attractive as ours because they all rely on ECG signal data. The key point here is that signal data is only available in the cloud, and it's often hard to access and hard to obtain for these end users who need our product the most. To summarize, our tools perform direct inference on ECG images, meaning they can reach the most number of end users. We have a broad suite of products which have been validated and developed in diverse patient populations, making them the most equitable and useful technology to help patients who are at risk for these disorders. Ensight-AI is an experienced team with innovative technology and a vision and an energy to see this product through to implementation. There are tens of thousands of patients here in New Haven who are at risk and suffering from undiagnosed disease, and millions across the US and across the world. With the help of the Wilson Prize, we can bridge the gap between effective therapies and the patients who need them the most. Thank you.
Terrific. And now we'll hear from our judges. Judges, when you have a question, please let me know. Just gesture to me.
Thank you, Veer. Good presentation. What cardiovascular disease are you focused on? Are you focused on more than one? All of them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Currently, our farthest along product is a tool to diagnose left ventricular systolic dysfunction or low ejection fraction, which there are a lot of therapies, for example, HFrEF for heart failure with reduced ejection fraction. However, as I mentioned, we have a pipeline where we have products for various other cardiovascular indications, including aortic stenosis, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, as well as a screen to diagnose several heart disorders and refer a patient for echo who may need it. So we're working in parallel on several different indications, but our plan is to first file for FDA approval with pre-submission for our low EF product.
So how have you thought about input data issues with either 12 leads, because lead placement can be pretty challenging, or noise on some of the wearables or some of the patch-based tools?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we found that with the wearable technology, for example, there have been papers that have been done that have shown that, as you mentioned, as there's noise in wearables, it hurts the performance of CNN models like the ones that we used. Our lab has actually developed technology that we've patented and are currently in the process of publishing in a major journal that allows us to adapt our models to be especially noise resilient to wearable data. And similarly, our models for 12 lead data take data from the Yale New Haven Health System that includes noise characteristics and have shown to validate in real world clinical settings where, as you mentioned, there are lead misplacements or there may be low quality images. So we've shown that in general, the models are resilient to a lot of these noise characteristics.
Thank you. It's a great presentation. My question is around how does your product operate outside the current workflow that a patient goes through when they're at a clinician's office? That is to say, if they already have an ECG or an EKG, shouldn't they already have a diagnosis already?
That's a great question. Thank you. So all these indications that I've put on the screen, as well as other ones that we're going after, right now, physicians themselves cannot diagnose these disorders using ECGs. So in this sense, our technology is augmentative in that normally a physician would require either an ultrasound, like a echocardiogram, or a cardiac MRI, or further advanced screening to diagnose these disorders. So usually a patient has to have already be symptomatic, has to have family history in order to be referred for these further advanced cardiac imaging because they're very costly and aren't approved for everyone. So our goal is to identify patients who have ECGs that our models flag for being high risk and encourage physicians to get echocardiograms for these same patients and help diagnose more cases that otherwise would not have been picked up because just from an ECG, the physician wouldn't have known to look for this further advanced cardiovascular disorder.
Thanks so much, Veer. Really great presentation. So my question was around access and how this opens up access to folks who are under-resourced, whether it's because they're in an under-resourced setting or because they're low income. How does it change that paradigm? Because wearables, right, are not cheap. So yeah, just curious about that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. One of the big focuses of our work has been performing inference on ECG images, which I mentioned earlier was the most widely available form of an ECG that a patient can receive. At a health system like Yale or other high resource like health systems in areas like New Haven or New York City or Mayo Clinic, for example, we can implement EHR software, which will allow us to perform all these analyses in the health system and kind of perform state-of-the-art clinical care. But often in rural settings, like the one we went to for validation in Missouri, ECGs aren't even stored as signals. So a patient may come into the hospital, they might have some scanned images in their health record, and normally these patients would not be able to have AI applied to their health record. So the focus of our technology, the fact that it focuses on being able to use ECG images, makes it the technology that's most likely to be able to help people who don't have access to our care like we may offer here in Yale New Haven.
Great work. This is really cool. So my question is on the competition. I didn't quite understand what you meant by the signal only. And can you go into detail about that and also touch on, is there any concern about the commoditization of AI with so many tools out there and generics coming out that every hospital is trying to implement their own? How do you stand out from that?
Yeah, so with the signal only technology, as I was alluding to in my last answer, the software that these three other companies that are our main competition have developed works on ECGs that are stored in the EHR system in the cloud at a specific hospital setting. So they may have a software package where they can take data from the ECG vendor and run their software in the hospital's cloud system and provide a solution there. But this technology does not often transfer from one health system to another health system. A lot of times, hospitals like the one in Missouri that we work with, or some of the ones in Texas too, don't have a way for physicians or don't have data scientists on staff, for example, to actually access this data. Physicians have no way of accessing the signal data, and it's too much of an investment for the health system to convert their whole hospital into being set up in a way that the clinical workflow revolves around this one product. So the majority of these technologies, we've been told, just aren't really reaching health systems around the world, around the country, because is too much of a burden for the health system to adopt it. The image-based technology, meanwhile, if I'm a clinician, I can go onto a patient's health record, I can screenshot their ECG, upload it to the app, or if I'm a patient, I can take a picture of my ECG printout, upload it to our mobile app, and get a prediction. Then beyond that, another great question that you had, where why can't each hospital just train their own model? Number one, most hospitals don't have enough high quality labeled data like we have here at Yale New Haven Health System. New Haven is actually the most nationally representative county of any county in the US. So our models we've shown and validated our models and shown that they're not biased, that they work well across demographics. And furthermore, in order to actually implement models and in order to implement these tools, you require FDA approval. And that's a massive barrier that we've been lucky enough to receive funding from the Blavatnik Fund and have a team of FDA advisors that we're working with right now to go through the process of FDA approval. And this is a significant barrier to competition that will allow our tools to be high quality, to be regulated, and to be used confidently by physicians and clinicians around the world.
I would love to follow up on Travis's question because you're talking about FDA approval. My understanding of AI is that it builds off of itself, right? And it uses the existing knowledge to just become better. So my question is about wearables and sending screenshots to AI. Is it possible in a year or whenever from now where I can send a screenshot to AI, not have to go through a health system, and it can spit out a diagnosis for me?
Yeah, so actually one of the products that we're working on would be a direct to consumer application where if you have an Apple Watch, you have a health app, we can export the data from your health app into the app.
What's your IP look like on that?
So we have 3 provisional patents we've already filed. One of them that I mentioned earlier was to adapt noisy wearable data because it's a significant problem. We have a strong IP portfolio around our image-based strategy, which has been our key differentiator and is what's gotten most of our stakeholders, health systems, clinicians, and pharma companies excited. And we're working on filing additional patents for the various other indications that I had on the CV indication slide. So we're very confident that we can protect our image-based IP, that we can protect our wearable IP, and getting FDA approval further creates this barrier to competition and further helps us differentiate our product.
Thank you.
I'm thinking of competition and especially of scaling up. You trained your model using data related to one disease, one type of disease. Do you have access to data for other diseases? Have you acquired that data?
Yes. So on that cardiovascular indication slide, we have individual models for all those different diseases. So because we have access to the entire repository of the Yale New Haven Health System, we have 3 million patients worth of ECGs, and we have every single patient's entire EHR record. So we have labels for every single cardiovascular disorder, both ICD codes, which competitors have and competitors have used, but which often don't capture the full profile of a disease because patients aren't always coded right. These are rough labels. So we also have access to clinical data sets and clinical streams. And one of the strengths of our team is that we have world-leading cardiologists like Dr. Khera, Dr. Krumholz, who actually know how to dive into the data and define the best patient cohorts to find the highest quality models. As Travis rightfully said, anyone can just go and train a model on some random data, but it's quality of the data in, quality of the data out. If you put in garbage data to the model, your model's not going to work well. And part of the expertise that our team has is we have high quality data from the Yale New Haven Health System, and we have a team that knows how to use it correctly.
All right, terrific. Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions. One more round of applause for Ensight-AI. Thank you. All right, terrific. Okay, up next, we have Equolity Bio here to do their pitch. Thank you. A round of applause for Equolity Bio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Equality Bio. Luis, Enya, and I founded Equality Bio earlier this year to help thousands of women around the globe who are like Teresa. Now, Teresa is representative of one of the many women that we've met with who are survivors of breast cancer. And thanks to modern technology and recent innovations, she's been able to largely overcome this diagnosis and get back to life. But the problem is, due to the form of her breast cancer, she has a severe estrogen deficiency. This means that her symptoms can go anywhere from having intense cramps and hot flashes to extreme fatigue and osteoporosis. Currently, in the status quo, Teresa has to take multiple breaks throughout the day, and her overall health and fitness is greatly impacted by this diagnosis. Now, the mainstream approach for treating problems of estrogen deficiency is that of hormone replacement therapy. or simply taking in a synthetic estrogen. However, a significant problem with this approach is its implications at an increased risk of breast cancer. This is what the data looks like for the average patient who does not have a history of breast cancer. For those who do, HRT is not prescribed because it would be too dangerous and would increase the risk of remission by far too much. This means that women like Teresa have no options in the status quo and instead must go on living their lives with these severe symptoms. However, we believe that there's a way forward. Equal is a soy-derived phytoestrogen, which means that it is a plant-based molecule which can mimic estrogen in the body. Because of these estrogenic effects, it's been shown to be effective at treating the symptoms. But because it's not the exact same as estradiol or other natural human estrogens, research has shown that S-equal is not implicated in an increased risk of breast cancer. Due to its interactions with the bodies, it's become a sort of Goldilocks molecule that can treat these problems without having too much of an increase in the hormone so as to bring about the risk of cancer. The problem, though, is that it's extremely expensive. Recent studies conducted have shown that the effective dose is around 30 milligrams a day. But based on the modern chemical synthesis techniques, 30 milligrams a day at $100 for 5 milligrams would be around $20,000 per month. This technology exists. This molecule is out there, but it is so expensive that there's no one who can realistically afford it. This is the problem which we seek to solve in Equality Bio. A recent study conducted in Japan by Hong et al. Found that certain humans are able to produce equal in their gut microbiome. They found that different bacteria which live inside of us, when exposed to soy, actually produce equal. And they realized that if someone could take the genes from these bacteria and use it to modify different strains to mass produce equal, then this could lead to a revolution in the access to this molecule. That is exactly what we did. We took the 4 genes found in these bacteria, such as Adler-Kreutzii fascians, which are extremely difficult to grow in the lab, and took them and put them inside of E. coli, a very common research species which can be mass-produced and well understood. The first step was to modify the bacteria with the landing pad, giving it the promoters and transcription factors necessary for a cargo. The second step was to transform the bacteria with their plasmid. And the final step is to then introduce daidzein, a soy-derived molecule, to this bacteria so that it produces equal for us. Currently, we are right at the final stage, being able to produce equal from daidzein. As we can see from this graph, chemical synthesis to $100 per milligram. Daidzein to equal is $10 per milligram, already a 10x savings. But our goal for this year is to go even further. Research has shown ways to produce daidzein from glucose. And so if we can combine these plasmids into one bacterial host, we will be able to create a pathway that allows us to produce equal for $1 per milligram. A 100 times price saving would absolutely revolutionize this market and will allow people across the globe access to this technology. It's not just people who are specific acute conditions such as breast cancer, but women all over the globe who are undergoing the menopause transition can be benefited by treatment through supplements such as Equal. Menopause is primarily driven by a decrease in hormone levels such as estrogen as the woman ages. But in the status quo, millions, if not billions of women around the globe do not seek treatment for these symptoms, either because it's too expensive or because cultural paradigms have made it seem that it is simply something that one must deal with. But personally, I don't think that people should be forced to just deal with problems. I believe in solving problems, and Equal is the way forward. Currently, according to the Female Founders Fund, the menopause market is worth around $600 billion in the year 2020. And because the elderly population of the world and the around menopause age population is expected to double in the next 40 years, this is expected to hit around $1 trillion in 2060. Equal is one of the few molecules which is able to treat these symptoms without increasing the risk of breast cancer. And thanks to our technology, we can make it accessible to women all over the globe. This isn't just people living in high resource areas in the United States. These are the billions of people who are living in countries that are beginning to age for the first time and really change their demographic, and who currently have no acceptable alternatives. There are, of course, other competitors in this market space. It's a big space, and people understand that it's a problem. However, because of their technology, they still use chemical synthesis. Competitors such as Equal and Equilibrium are only able to provide around 10 to 15% of the effective dose. This is totally insufficient for actually dealing with the problem at scale, which is why I believe something powered by synthetic biology is necessary to actually solve this problem. We, Luis, Enya, sitting in the front, and myself are the perfect team to work on this. This is a picture of when we went to the iGEM Grand Jamboree last year in the fall. Now, iGEM means International Genetically Engineered Machines, and we went to an international conference to show our research based off of this. We were very happy to win the iGEMers Prize, voted upon by all the teams in the entire conference. That sort of signal gave us the confidence we needed, along with our own skills, me being a computer science major, Luis chemical engineering, and Enya MCDB, to recognize that this is a problem that needs to be solved today. This is a problem that our technology could solve, and this is a problem that needs energetic individuals who are willing to push forward on these issues. The next steps, as I mentioned, are to continue research on the glucose to daisine aspect of Equal so we can bring down prices by another 10-fold. After that, we have two plans for a going to market strategy. One is the more intensive form for those who have breast cancer and similar diseases and disorders. And this is something which would require long-term FDA approval and would be more expensive. The other, faster version is to create it as a supplement. After all, that's what Equal and Equilibrium are already doing. Because it's a supplement, it would not require such extensive FDA approval. And so we believe that we could get our product at $1 a milligram out into markets by 2024. This is the sort of thing that could change the lives for women around the globe like Teresa. In the status quo, they're told to simply live with their symptoms. But thanks to synthetic biology, we have the solutions for the problems of the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we'll hear from our judges.
Thanks. That was a great presentation. One question about the chemical synthesis side. Could that number be brought down if there was a market developed? Is it a Kickstart issue?
Yeah, theoretically, but the problem with chemical synthesis is it's extremely energy intensive, right? Like you have these huge machines, huge processes, putting it together like through basically like heating things up really high and then letting it cool down. And just like thermodynamically, that's way less favorable than the molecular factory created by evolution that is like a bacterial cell.
Yeah, a similar question to that actually about how you're able to scale. What does your purification process look once you have these recombinant bacteria spitting out this chemical? And do you have the current infrastructure to scale?
Yes. So acid purification, there are basically two forms to do it. In the testing form, we mainly rely on LC-MS to simply verify that the molecule is being produced. But in the future, in a larger level, we would go to fermentation and other forms of purification that require a lot more capital, which we do not have. We do not have the infrastructure for mass producing a molecule, but there are many synthetic biology companies which thrive on partnering with groups such as ourselves, whether it's all the way from Ginkgo of synthetic biology to just normal pharmaceutical companies. We would be aiming to cooperate and partner with these companies to really scale to a mass product.
Thanks so much for that presentation, and thanks for working on this issue for something that affects half of the world's population. There really isn't enough talk about it, so I really appreciate that. So my question is, so you addressed the risks for remission for breast cancer, for hormone replacement therapy. Are there any other kind of risks for such high levels of Equal? Because it sounds like the other kind of supplements that are over the counter right now. Exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely an important question. So Ishiwada 2009 is the dosage study, and they were also conducting tests on the level of estradiol and other estrogenic molecules in the blood. And what they found was that they were able to reduce the symptoms without increasing the blood levels of these molecules. And so the current theory is that Equal is something that is more localized, is something that deals with the receptors, specifically the alpha receptors. And by not targeting the beta receptors, it's not going to have the implication. We believe in this science, and there are multiple studies which have shown no correlation. And I think that once we have equal on a larger level, we can even do more mechanistic sort of research to prove like why we won't have to worry about these problems.
Yes, thank you. Excellent presentation. I like your conviction and your enthusiasm. One thing about future competition and where to manufacture and so on and so forth brings me to the question of, did you make sure you're not stepping on any patents, like bumping into hurdles that wouldn't allow you to proceed forward? It seems like the other alternative is so expensive, clearly, but they must have protected it big time. And so have you explored that angle?
Yeah. Yeah, I think two parts of the answer. First is like the chemical synthesis competitors. I would say they've not protected very much because most of these companies are actually at a very industrial scale. Like it's not something that is used en masse as a treatment yet. Now, as to the intellectual property regarding like the scientific advances, that yes, a lot of what we've done so far is basically taking different scientific groups and synthesizing them into something new. But especially our research in the future, once it's conducted with funding such as theoretically from Startup Yale and other groups, we would have a lot more independence to really be able to know that, okay, whether it's the more intensive FDA version that, oh, like we have a biologic here, or whether it's a supplement version where it's, oh, like we have this process which is unique to our firm, that's something where we'd have a lot more differentiation and legal protection.
So great work. I have a couple of questions. First is around like the patient population. You mentioned kind of all women, I guess, at risk for menopause, but it seems to me like the real market is going to be the cancer survivors, breast cancer survivors. So first of all, how many women is that specific market? And secondly, why is Equal not FDA approved? Why is it just a supplement and not go through the FDA approval process for that patient population?
Yeah, I think I wasn't clear. For that population, it definitely would be FDA approved. And that's like a longer term goal. And I'm estimating around its population 500,000 if we look to like the Western world. However, if we look to the globe in general and why I believe the supplement is important, there are millions of people, like billions really, who currently this is simply viewed as not a problem that's like able to be solved and something like that. And so I really believe in the use case as a supplement, because even in America, where there's a lot more awareness about this, many people choose not to take HRT because of the breast cancer risks, especially in the last. HRT was really big in the late 90s, but then people found out about the cancer risk and now the use is like back to very low. So it's still an open problem for those undergoing the menopause transition that we think can be solved.
And okay, I have follow-up questions. The use case here. I'm struggling a little bit with the COGS of Equal itself. The study you mentioned is from 2009, which seems pretty outdated. And the cost of I forget what it's called, the equilibrium, whatever, is like $1 a pill. Even if that's a lower dose than what you're proposing, we're not talking 100x differential in the price. So can you just explain to me what I'm missing there?
Yeah. So the thing about Equal and equilibrium is basically that it's a bit more than one. It's like more like $100 for the dose. But these are sorts of things where there's a lot of dissatisfaction with their use. Like even when there have been certain studies based on it, and there's like very hard to find statistically significant improvements from these sorts of things. And so the question is like, why in the last 10 years has there not been a lot more research and a lot more development? We actually think it has a lot to do with the daidzein angle, right? Our focus in the next year is to be able to go directly from glucose to Equal. And this is based on work that was done in yeast in around 2019. I think that's a really essential thing to actually get the dosage up and to do something that can really be relied upon to solve the problem.
Sorry, one last question. I'll stop. Sorry. Have you thought about making like an oral biologic that would just secrete this in the gut?
We thought about that a lot. It's very interesting. Theoretically, we're working with Lactobacillus casei, and it's like a patient could take this bacteria, and when they eat soy, it would naturally make it. But the thing is, like hormones are complicated, right? And it's like we have to be able to understand the dosage over time, because the way it would actually work is you would have an individual would have like less of the equal at a certain time and more later throughout the month, and such to replicate the natural cycle. So if we made a probiotic, like we would not be able to have that control, and it would probably like make things worse.
We're pressed for time, so this is a 30-second question. You said you wanted to go to market by 2024. Can you describe your team's commitment between now and 2024?
Yeah. So basically, we are going to be doing research over this summer, and depending on how things go, like we may or may not be enrolled in the fall, and then we could do more research in the fall. And probably, obviously, we can't make firm predictions, but 6 months should be enough for us to get from the glucose to daisine to equal. And at that point, we would be looking for partnerships really aggressively.
Thank you very much. Alrighty, up next is patient control dispenser and deactivator. Thank a round of applause for patient control dispenser and deactivator. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia C., and I'm excited to present to you the patient control dispenser and deactivator of liquid oral pain medicine. Our device transforms how pain is managed. Over the past 2 years, my co-founders and I have been working diligently to solve this problem. We have assembled an amazing team with expertise across anesthesia, engineering, and consulting. Dr. Jinlei Li is a professor of anesthesia here at Yale and a nationally known acute pain expert. Dr. Daniel Wisnia is a professor of orthopedics and mechanical engineering. He is also a nationally known healthcare disparities musculoskeletal researcher. And I am a fourth-year MD MBA student at Yale and a former R&D engineer at Medtronic. We are supported by a very robust team of advisors. Let me start by introducing you to a patient who really exemplifies why we need better pain control. Mary is a 70-year-old African-American woman recovering from spine surgery. She will be prescribed opioids to treat her pain. Right now, Mary must call a nurse every 3 to 5 hours when she needs one oxycodone pill. If the nurse is busy, she will wait as long as 2 hours in excruciating pain. And this is a universal problem, but some groups are more vulnerable because of implicit bias. Because Mary is African-American, of low socioeconomic status, and she's female, her cries for pain management may not be readily addressed by her healthcare providers. Delays in receiving proper pain management lead her to have uncontrolled pain, prolonged hospitalization, lost sleep, and even readmission to the hospital 1 week later due to pain. In reality, Mary is just one of 100 million patients every year in the US who struggle with acute postoperative pain. And currently, they have only 3 avenues for treatment. First, they can receive pills from a nurse, but this has delays and inconsistencies. Secondly, they can receive liquid medicine through the vein using what is called a patient-controlled analgesic pump, also known as a PCA pump. However, this method is invasive and is not indicated for most patients. And additionally, it has a difficult transition to oral medication and often requires patients to stay an additional day in the hospital because of titrating the medicine. Lastly, patients can also get pills using a pill PCA, otherwise known as a pill lockbox. This method is not used clinically because there is a high risk for misuse and diversion. And when we say diversion, we mean patients illegally using medications that were not prescribed to them. Our team set out to address this universal need for safe and immediate delivery of pain medicine. And our device repurposes a normal PCA pump, traditional IV PCA pump, for oral consumption of liquid medicine. And additionally, our device reduces disparities because it allows us to administer medication immediately to patients who are typically ignored when they are in pain. Here's how our device works. First, patients will press a button on the remote and the PCA pump will pump the dose into the medicine cup. Patients can then drink the dose by sucking out of the straw, and any excess medication will be instantly deactivated using activated charcoal and solidifier. Here's our most recent prototype demonstrating this. It was built here in the CEID. Our device will revolutionize pain management by allowing patients like Mary to dispense medication immediately upon demand when they need it. It will also allow smaller dosing at higher frequency, which is ideal for geriatric patients. And lastly, it is tamper-proof, so it will immediately deactivate any excess medication. As we were developing our device, we spoke with over 50 patients, nurses, pharmacists, and hospital administrators. I personally went to the hospital and spoke with these nurses, talked with the patients after surgery. Patients told us that I prefer to use this device because I'm an independent person. And for my C-section, I was pleased with my PCA. I did not have to call, and it was there. 57% said that they called nurses for pain medicines 4 to 6 times a day. More than 30% did receive delayed medicine. 71% said they would prefer or be interested to try our device. Nurses told us that change of shift is when patients can wait as long as an hour for medicine. And another nurse told me that all we do is pass pain meds. 47% of their time was spent managing pain, and they rated our device favorably at 6.4 out of 10 over pills. We've also spoken to numerous professional committees here at the Yale New Haven Health Hospital, as well as the Connecticut Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services. All of these administrators have been excited to try our device. They affirm and validate the impact our device can have on patients. So let's zoom out for a moment and think about the impact this device can have on our communities and hospitals. For one, our device allows instant tracking of medication at home compared to a bottle of pills that a patient can get sent home with. Secondly, our device mitigates diversion of prescription drugs. In 2020 alone, 142 opioid prescriptions were dispensed. However, 70% of them were not fully taken. And what we do know about misused opioids is that more than half of them were obtained from family or friends. Most importantly, our device will improve healthcare equity for marginalized groups. Research has shown that individuals who are African American, of low socioeconomic status, or female often report more postoperative pain, sometimes due to implicit bias. This has huge implications on their outcomes and even risk for misuse and overdose. And you can see here on the slide that in recent years, opioid-related overdose deaths have been increasing among African Americans at a much higher rate compared to whites. We also know that individuals who may appear drug-seeking or have a history of substance use are more likely to be under prescribed medication. Our device addresses all of these challenges because it gives medicine objectively without discrimination by race or gender or ethnicity or social status. Compared to pills, PCA pumps, and pill PCAs, our device is novel because it is the only one that provides safe, cost-effective delivery of liquid medicine. In terms of milestones, last year we were able to file 2 provisional patents, we built 3 prototypes, and we interviewed many customers. In August of last year, we won the largest innovation award here at the Yale New Haven Health Hospital. And in October, our device was endorsed by the largest international anesthesia conference, and we were given the Pitch Award by their foundation. Currently, we are about to sign a contract with a contract manufacturer, and next steps would be to conduct a clinical trial, submit for regulatory approval, build a second generation device, and eventually build a home version of our device with remote monitoring. Right now, we are at a point where funding is truly crucial. The $10K Wilson Prize will enable us to accomplish crucial milestones this year. For one, it will enable us to complete our contract with our contract manufacturer. We were able to negotiate our deal down by 2/3 with the understanding that we would own more than half of the deliverables. This is challenging because my 2 co-founders are full-time clinical staff. I'm a full-time student. However, given my engineering background, I'm really excited to be able to spearhead this project. And this funding would enable me to possibly commit to that full-time this summer. Secondly, we must complete an FDA Q submission to determine a regulatory path. This is perhaps the most crucial part of our project timeline. Our regulatory consultant is paid $200 an hour, and so this would give us a couple hours of her time every week. Lastly, we are eager to prototype integration of remote patient monitoring software into our device. And right now, this is a nice to have feature, but not a need to have or essential feature. And having funding would allow us to do this prototyping now as opposed to in 2026. In summary, our device transforms the way pain is managed. It empowers patients to safely take control of the pain, and when implemented widely, can reduce pill trafficking and overdose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now for our judges.
Thanks so much, Claudia, for that. So with my startup, I work on sickle cell, and I'm hearing a lot of sort of use cases. Yeah. Anyway, we should talk afterwards. But my question is around the discrimination and disparities that are faced by patients in, let's say, an emergency setting, right, which you addressed here. So how would your product change the experience of patients when they come into the ER, they face discrimination because they tend to be Black or brown, right? And they're not seen for several hours. How does this kind of change that paradigm? And then similarly, when patients are being prescribed doses of opioids, right? The patients know themselves most what doses they need more than probably the nurses who maybe see them once a month or whatever it is. And so with that prescription piece, sure, your device is patient controlled, but you still need that kind of initial prescription for the appropriate dose. So how are those two kind of facets of discriminations that patients face addressed by your device?
Yeah, great questions. Thank you. Regarding the first question, in a situation where a patient comes to the ER, ideally, what the doctor could do is send them home with our device. And then the device will be able to allow the patient to get doses within prescribed limits. And if they're experiencing more pain, they might be able to get a second dose. However, it will not allow them to get an overdose of medication, if that answers your question. And for your second question, could you remind me again what was?
Sure. You addressed that the patients themselves would control how much they are getting, right?
Yeah.
But if patients are not believed, right, by doctors, how would they prescribe the appropriate amount to be taken so that there's not overdoses, for instance?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my understanding is right now, doctors must prescribe pills to patients when they're in pain. And even if they're not believed, they would prescribe some sort of medication. It could be an oral analgesic. It doesn't have to be an opioid. And actually, our device doesn't just use opioids. It can be used for any sort of oral pain medicine. So possibly a doctor, if they're worried about opioid use disorder, they could instead prescribe safer medication via this device. And in that way, they can provide a range of options to our patients using the same device.
Hi, great presentation, Claudia. My question is around your go-to-market plan and trying to understand why would hospital systems adopt this over the current system, and whether or not there's actually an incentive to do.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And in terms of the market, here's just an overview of many companies over time, since 2003, who've been trying to address this issue. However, they haven't really been successful. And we think our device is going to add value to hospitals because it will reduce admission, like length of stay in the hospital. And what we've seen with one competitor product called OnQ Pump, it's an IV pump that you can go home with. Their clinical studies show that patients went home an average of 1.1 days earlier from the hospital. They had up to 69% lower pain scores, and they reported 3 times as many improvement in patient satisfaction. And so knowing that precedence, we have confidence that our device will truly reduce hospital length of stay. And that is a major incentive that any payer, private or public, would want to pay for. Thanks.
Thanks, Claudia. That was, again, really interesting presentation. These two hit my first and second question, so I'm on my tertiary. For delay in a bed setting in the hospital for delay of care, when that's studied and measured, how do you differentiate sort of patient perspective of I'm in pain, I wanted another dose, I didn't get it in time, versus actual nurse availability and delay? So,
yeah, that's absolutely a good question. For that reason, I separately interviewed patients and nurses. And patients, of course, might have their own biased understanding of when they did or did not receive medication on time. But it's interesting to me that nurses told me that all they do, all the time that they have is truly spent managing pain. And I think with the nursing shortage that's going to continue in the coming decades, this problem is only going to increase. And the reality is we would probably have to interview more customers, more patients, more nurses. But I think we've at least validated that this issue is universal across both sides.
Thanks, Claudia. It's hard to say this, but when I read your write-up, I imagined a device that's much less elaborate and intricate.
Yeah.
And when I saw the picture here today of the device, it turned out to be more like equipment / device. How long does it take to produce one prototype? How do you see imagine manufacturing the product going forward? How fast, how expensive?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are very good questions. Thank you. So you're right. The idea is really simple. Right now, our prototype is at a working stage, but we're really, one of the key objectives of working with a contract manufacturer is to truly simplify our device. One of the challenges we ran into when we interviewed customers is pharmacists wanted to know, how will we make sure it's safe? Like, how will it be tamper-proof? And so those are some of the reasons we had to include more secure mechanisms of our device, ways to make sure it wouldn't be mishandled. However, we anticipate really simplifying our device with a contract manufacturer. In terms of timeline, our contract would be for the coming year. And at the end of that, we would have 30 units that we're going to take into the clinical trial. And then we can get feedback and reiterate in a second gen device.
I have one question about your device really quickly, and that is, in thinking about scaling, have you tried to understand how this device could be used outside of pain management?
Oh, that's a very good question. To be honest, we've focused really on the pain management market, which is already large enough.
Yeah.
We have thought about acute postoperative pain, and then we've, in the future, thought about chronic pain as well as methadone patients. And pharmacists actually brought up sickle cell patients as a potential use case, as well as pediatric patients with rare diseases. So I'm sure that there are many others.
Okay, that's fascinating. And then my last question is, you gave a statistic of like maybe 6.5 out of 10% nurses were interested in, or hospitals are interested in implementing this product. Can you talk about what are some hesitations or unintended consequences that the other 3.5 might be thinking about? Yeah. Well, maybe not, but more broadly then, what are hesitations towards this product coming from the perspective of nurses and hospitals?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one hesitation is that it may not reduce the allocation of nurses to patients, because that might be a ratio that's set by the hospital in advance. However, we think that it will improve quality of care, because nurses can now, instead of spending 50% of their time managing pain, they can spend 20% and then focus on other more helpful quality metrics. And other things that they said, I think how complex the device is something they were wondering about, that we hope to continue to work on with our contract manufacturer. And I think that's really it for now. Thanks.
Great presentation. Is very interesting and obviously huge unmet need. Wondering if you can dive in a little bit more on the difference between this solution and a pill PCA.
Absolutely.
Do you have to have, is it only oral, or is it only liquid formulations that you can do? And I'm just kind of wondering, I guess I don't understand what diversion control is too.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So in general, giving opioids to patients is hard because of the regulatory burden and the high risk that patients can give it to other people. And so when we say diversion, it means patients maybe having extra medication and then other people somehow getting access to that. And so any way to prevent that is crucial. And as you can see, there have been so many companies trying to address the same issue of self-administration, but they haven't been very successful. And we see the ones that are most recent have focused on giving pills. And we don't think this is very effective, because as there's so many pills lying around and no one can control like who takes what, and you could easily take a pill out of that and store it somewhere else. But with liquid medicine, that is much harder to do, especially when patients must suck out of a straw in order to get their medicine with our device.
Okay, got it. Thanks. And just one more question. For the regulatory strategy, for the 510K, is the predicate device that you're using, would that be one of the pill PCAs?
That is a great question. And so we have been working hard on this with our regulatory consultants. The reality is there is no good predicate. We are anticipating filing as an accessory to the PCA, perhaps through the de novo pathway or the generic 510K path. And so we really need to do a Q submission to determine some of those details. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all the time we have for questions. All right, up next is our final pitch of the event. Up next is Relieve 'em. So please give a round of applause for Relieve 'em. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Volume good, everyone? Great. Hi, I'm David Fleming, founder and CEO of Relieve 'em. I'm a freshman, first year at Yale College studying economics and philosophy. I'm thrilled to be here today, and I'm honored to be a finalist for the Wilson Prize. Now, let me begin by sharing my story. Growing up was pretty difficult for me. I suffered for most of my childhood from debilitating headaches. Each one came with excruciating pain near my temples and usually caused me to vomit 10 to 20 times, leaving me writhing on the floor in agony with my head throbbing in pain, needing total darkness and absolute silence. I even missed the last 55 days of 5th grade due to headaches. I only lasted 9 days in 6th grade before I was kicked out of school because I couldn't meet the attendance requirements, forcing me to be homeschooled for all of middle school. I saw doctors all over the country trying to find any solution. They gave me 2 choices. They said you either live with the pain or you take medication. Living with the pain was completely unrealistic. Medication was often ineffective and usually caused nasty side effects. So I set out to develop my own solution, and I invented a self-serve headache relief device. In particular, I invented a drug-free device that relieves tension headaches by applying pressure to the suboccipital muscles at the base of the skull to release tension in the region and effectively relieve headaches. Now, I changed my life. I went from being kicked out of middle school because I couldn't meet the attendance requirements to not missing a single day of high school. Now, I share my story and inspire others for them to create solutions to their own problems. Unfortunately, I wasn't alone in my struggles. About 12 million Americans suffer from chronic tension headaches. This is about more than New York City and Los Angeles combined. And chronic is defined as 15 or more headaches every single month. It's more likely that these 12 million people will suffer from a headache on a given day than not. And then more broadly, in terms of general tension headaches, 2 in 3 Americans suffer from tension headaches. How big's the market? It's massive. Let's discuss the existing treatment methods. So we have the usual suspects, right? We have massage therapy and chiropractors, ice packs and heat pads, and medicine. We also have some current suboccipital release tools, which I'll gloss over later. So massage therapy and chiropractors, they're expensive and they're recurring costs. You have to pay every single time you go. And they're pretty inconvenient. You can't exactly plan when you're going to have a headache, so it's difficult to schedule appointments in advance. Then we have ice packs and heat pads. These only provide temporary relief, and they often require extended periods of use. Then we have medicine. As I mentioned, often ineffective, recurring costs. You have to pay for every bottle of medicine you get. Let's say it's Tylenol, and then causes nasty side effects. Personally, I got severe erosive gastritis from ibuprofen. Then we have some current suboccipital release tools. Okay, what's wrong with that? So it's bulky, it's non-adjustable, and there's no localized pressure. You can't really target the muscles in the right way to provide the deep relief necessary to relieve your headaches. Great, so that's the issue right now. What's my solution? My solution is Relieve 'em. Let me show you a few prototypes I have. So I have some early versions like this, and then I have some later versions of different prototypes that I created, and I'll show you some of these too. So how does it work? Users adjust the device to their preferred position. They set it down on the ground, and then they lay down on it and have the tips apply pressure to their suboccipital muscles. And after 3 to 5 minutes of use, headaches are relieved. Take it from my informal study. I tested on 50 people this device. Not only did it work on me, but for these 50 people, 96% experienced relief and only 4% experienced no relief, and no one had any side effects. So unlike the classic market alternatives, the solution's inexpensive. It's convenient. It's yours. You own it. You can use it anytime you want. And it's completely drug-free. How does it overcome the other suboccipital release tools? It's adjustable for all neck sizes and provides localized pressure for more, deeper, lasting relief. So what progress have we made so far? I researched the problem, developed the initial prototype, and incorporated his Fleming Innovations LLC back in 2016. Then I developed over 10 prototypes, each building on user feedback, and got my first patent issued. So for these prototypes, I would take one, I'd build it, bring it to users, see what they thought, whether it was intuitive to them, if they had any suggestions, then they'd tell me what issues they had. I'd go back to the drawing board and build on whatever feedback they had to bring them a better unit. By now, we're nearing the final unit, developed over 25 prototypes, showed you a few here, secured 4 US patents, building a team and brand, and looking to launch this summer. I've also learned how to navigate the 510K exemption, which I can talk about later in Q&A if you're interested. Okay, so here's the progress. If I want to launch this summer, what's the go-to-market strategy? Let me tell you about it. So I'll start with some facts. Headache sufferers are passionate about regaining control over their lives. Just like me, we were desperate for any solution. And then each one knows a bunch of other people who also suffer from headaches. This is absolutely crucial because I could spark a word of mouth flame where people will use my device, experience relief, tell all their friends who also suffer from headaches, and they'll buy it too, and so on. Then, in order to do this, I plan to launch a Kickstarter to generate early support. So if I can start the support early, then I can get more funding for tooling, and I could also start the word of mouth revolution before I launch. I'll sell direct to consumer through Relievum.com and Amazon, and then eventually I hope to sell in stores as another revenue channel. Okay, now you're probably wondering, okay, what are these 3 points at the end? American Ninja Warrior, Shark Tank, QVC. I competed twice on American Ninja Warrior over spring break, and these episodes will air in 2023 summer and 2024 summer. I showcased my device, talked about it, mentioning the name Relievum. The hosts of the show had it, we're showcasing it, and on stage, I demonstrated how to use it. This will be massive appearance, and we'll start immediate sales right when the episode's released. On Shark Tank and QVC, these are just hopefuls, but I think with the American Ninja Warrior appearance and the sales it will generate, I'd have a strong chance of getting on both of these platforms. I'll also go really hard at the social media marketing, as again, it's a great word of mouth spreader, so this can go viral if people start experiencing success. So I'll go really hard at both Instagram and TikTok. Okay, we're going to market. Who's going with us? The team. Founder and CEO, me. Mentor, Matt Buckland, who helps out with design and manufacturing decisions. Mentor, Gabe, who I think might be here today, who helps out with go-to-market strategy. General advisor, Will Fleming. Design and manufacturing team, David and Michael Aitchison. And then I have a couple patent attorneys from the very well-regarded Pillsbury Winthrop Shaw Pittman. And as you might notice, I do too. We have a few weak spots. We have them in operations, sales and marketing, finance. Let me just touch on 2 real quick. With sales and marketing, we don't have anyone right now because with the Yale communities and the sales we'll generate from American Ninja Warrior, I don't want to overhire early and drain resources when we'll probably have just natural sales and marketing that will be really helpful for the business. For operations, I've assembled a small team of volunteers who's willing to help out in the early days of processing orders and picking up phone calls. And then for finance, again, don't want to overhire early, drain the resources before we have incoming sales. Okay, let's talk about the prize. So what's this prize mean? So right now I have current obstacles in funding, and this prize money will help me overcome it and move into the production phase. I'll allocate $5,000 towards a finalized unit, which includes designing and then 3D printing prototypes, and then $5,000 towards tooling costs, and the Kickstarter can pay for the rest. And then remember, 12 million people suffer from chronic tension headaches. These people are desperate for solutions. But the problem is, not all of them can access the solutions. There are some solutions that exist, maybe like Botox shots people get in their neck, and some things people say help certain surgeries that may be useful, but not everyone can access these. In fact, very few people can. So what do? I even the playing field. At Relievum, we reduce the disparity in wealth and access by providing an affordable solution for everyone. And then to continue this, when I become profitable, we're going to donate units to those who can't afford our device so that they can experience the same relief that I do. What's the future of healthcare? Here's my vision for the future of healthcare, and here's how Relievum fits into it. I see healthcare as empowering individuals to assume more control over their care, being convenient and inexpensive and drug-free. We match all of these. Empowers individuals for more control. Again, you buy this, you own it, it's yours, you use it whenever you want. You have complete control over your care. It's convenient. You have it right there. Inexpensive, one-time purchase, expecting to sell it for $39.99 or $49.99. Drug-free. You relieve your pain completely naturally. So now, please join me in my quest to change lives so that others can experience the same story of struggle and triumph that I did.
Thank you. All right, up next, got our judges.
Thanks. This was an incredibly dynamic presentation. My question for you is that this prize really focuses on access to low resource communities. And can you tell me a little bit more how your product affects these communities, the research that you've done, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, of course. So there are a couple points on this. One is that research shows that people who make $35,000 or less disproportionately suffer from tension headaches. So this group is more at risk of suffering from tension headaches, and we're providing a solution for them. And then again, it's very affordable. So almost everyone can purchase it. And if they can't, then once we become profitable, we'll begin donating units because I think it's really important. This really affected my life, and I want other people to have this relief as well.
Again, great presentation, a great journey. Two questions. First, clinically, tension headaches versus migraines. What's the difference, if there is one? And then the second is I want to call your bluff on the 510K pathway and have you tell us about that.
Okay. Yeah, great. So yeah, on the first point, yeah, can you just expand a little more on that? Sorry, real quick.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to not be a headache sufferer, but I know quite a few people who have very serious migraine issues, and they're looking for solutions for all the same things. And so you talk about tension headaches, they talk about migraines. Are they the same thing?
Yeah.
I mean,
so migraines are a little more mysterious than we like to think. They've done some research on it. Some migraines can come from certain food sensitivities and other things. So I'm not really declaring my device as relieving migraines, but I am declaring that it relieves tension headaches. So that's really the stance on this. And some tension headaches can escalate into migraines. So in that sense, maybe I'm relieving them, but the focus is on tension headaches, which make up 80 to 90% of all headaches. And then and then on 510K exemption, I've talked to lots of different people, and they've all declared that this is a massage tool. And as a massage tool, you don't ingest it. It's non-invasive. So you can get a 510K exemption for this. It's not a class 1, not a class 2 medical device. It just is any massage tool. Let's say you have a massage cane for your back or a Theragun. You don't need FDA approval, as I've been advised, for a device such as this.
Thank you. I really appreciated your presentation. Really appreciated your enthusiasm and how dedicated you were from such a young age to solving something that affected you and many around the world. So my question is around sort of your COGS, like how did you land on the $39.99 or $49.99 number? Because you did mention that later on when you're profitable, you want to give them away for free, right? But what's your calculation and kind of that access point being you making decisions on like giving them away to people who need them versus having it at a lower price point, perhaps that's more accessible to folks? Or what was your kind of thinking around that?
Yeah, awesome questions. Right now, I don't have a completely final prototype, so I don't really have the cost of goods. What I've done with a price point is I've gone to potential consumers and said, hey, what would you expect this to sell for? And most of them put it in the $39.99, $49.99 range. Some would say, I'm not charging some absurd number for this device. And then, of course, it is a business. So I am looking for decent profit margins for most people who are purchasing this device. And then if people cannot afford the device, I'd love to donate devices so that they can experience the same relief.
Thanks.
I also enjoyed your enthusiasm, your conviction, and your energy. And I can see it continuing. My question to you is, you're going to need a team or teams to work with you. And you're going to need to scale up very quickly because we all know this is a low-tech product and you never know who can copy it or not. And so I'd like you to scale up quickly. And my question to you is, do you have ideas as to who you want to hire, how you're going to go about marketing, and who are your teammates that will work with you on it, and how fast can you go? And
so it's for that last part, we'll go as fast as we can. I'm definitely open to hiring a general manager and some advisors to help me manage my schoolwork with the business. I'd be open to a leave of absence to really make this device work. if I need to. And then for these 3 points right here, I'll hire as quickly as I need to, which will probably be very quickly. But right now I'm just leaving these blank because I don't want to drain resources when I don't have profitability yet. Does that sort of answer your question?
I want to echo everyone's positive feedback on your enthusiasm. Really cool, especially in an issue patent. I know that alone is a huge feat. So I kind of want to build off your question about manufacturing. Have you identified manufacturing partners? Do you have any idea like who would be able to manufacture this, where, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. So with the Aitchison brothers, they have their main like design points. So with design and manufacturing, and then they have resources for manufacturing the products. They're based in Arizona, so it'd probably be domestic manufacturing to begin with. And then I'm happy to move overseas if we reach that point.
Sure. And another question. I'm a drug developer, so
yeah,
I feel obligated to ask this question.
Okay.
I think the treatment landscape for pharmacotherapy for migraines and headaches has changed with the anti-CGRP, the medication, especially now they have approved antibodies and now they have orals. Does that kind of change any of the value proposition that you have, or is it still you're really honing in on inexpensive and accessibility?
Yeah, I don't think that changes the value proposition. Again, great question. Yeah, I'm going for affordability, accessibility. And then, as I mentioned, those are 12 million chronic headache sufferers who may be open to those other options as well. But this is a broader market. This is just the 2 in 3 Americans who suffer from tension headaches, who might not be willing to go to the extremes to get some of these newer solutions popping up.
Thank you. My favorite part of the presentation was when you laid on the ground and demonstrated your product. So thank you. My question is about exactly that. So you are embodied, you are young, you are in public. So presumably if someone has a tension headache at work or in public, they wouldn't be able to use that variation of the device. So I'm curious, have you thought of how this device would work with someone sitting up, maybe if they're using a wheelchair in any other spaces?
Yeah, so great question. So I've thought about certain attachments. So I can put this around chairs. So I'd have a sort of a strap and then it would apply pressure to the muscles in that way. Of course, it's designed so there's no technology in it, no electronics, and you just lay down and it works simply with gravity and the weight of your head. But there's certain ways where you can just put the device behind your head and push in, or we can attach it around a chair and have you strapped in. So there are definitely other options and attachments I can get. And then even more broadly than just headaches, I'm hoping to make other versions of these for lower back pain, upper back pain, all sorts of pain, so that we just have tension release company.
Thank you. When you're thinking about equity, the working class, folks who don't have accessibility, that's an awesome approach. So thank you.
Thank you. And also I did include a couple slides here on the science. So,
I was going to ask about that. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, sorry.
How does it work?
Yeah. So here are a bunch of different studies showing the effectiveness of suboccipital release therapy. And I've basically created a novel, innovative way of achieving this. So currently some chiropractors do this. So they'll put their thumbs on your suboccipital region, which is right here, in all these different colors. These are different strands of the muscle. And this is basically creating a more convenient, accessible way of achieving that same result. And then also have some testimonials. The ones in green are from users, and then the ones without any color coding are from chiropractors and doctors.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for questions. All right, so the Audience Choice Award for the Rita Wilson Seed Grant goes to Equolity Bio. Okay, and the 2023 Rita Wilson Seed Grant Award goes to Ensight-AI. We have one last round of applause for all of our pitches today. Thank you guys so much. And thank you to our amazing judges as well. You guys were terrific.